They were the most depressing parts of my week when I would go see this guy, and he was like a friend of a friend of a friend. Like he was so far disconnected from like my little social group. He was just such. All right. Usually when you call somebody a loser, what you mean is like they're bad at life, and they like through things they've done to themselves. This guy had loserdom thrust upon him, though, like through a series of unfortunate events. I've told the story before, but like there was this one like 9-month to 12-month period where he kept being seriously injured and mangled, like while just trying to work a job and provide for a family. That's what had driven him to selling marijuana and driving a long haul truck. Was he just kept getting injured severely through no real fault of his own. Like he was in this construction job.
KFC.
He worked construction, and they were putting like a tin roof on a house, and he was on top, and there's a guy on the bottom pushing this big sheet of tin toward him. The guy on the bottom was all fucked up on meth and like got too aggressive, and the guy is holding a sheet of tin at the top, and the guy at the bottom shoves it so hard that he cuts a bunch of the tendons in my boy's hand and like cripples his hand. They've got to go in and like reattach tendons. Well, now he can't use his right hand for like months as a construction worker.
He doesn't get like $1 million for that?
No.
If you look up how much people like that get from the government on injuries, it's depressing. It's like, oh, you lose an eye? Yeah, we'll throw you $50K.
Like a company? Or?
But what about after?
No, I feel like Steve is like, what?
I need my eye.
You hire an attorney. You don't get it from the government. You get it from the company. You know.
This is like Billy Bob's construction company. Like
all the TV attorneys salivate over cases like that.
Well,
like no.
So now he's got a crippled right hand that's going to take months to recover. Well, he's like, hey, I'm pretty good with my left. Let's keep fucking working. I'm a man. I provide for my family. So they're like, he's at a different construction job in like a sub basement where they're hammering rebar into like mostly dry concrete. Like it's wet enough that you can hammer rebar into it, but it's dry enough that that's still an effort. And I don't know if a chip of steel came off the hammer or the rebar, but hammers are this like really tempered steel. And when a chip comes off of a hammer, it has this shocking amount of velocity to it because they're not supposed to chip. So if they have chipped, it's deceptively extreme in nature. And so a chip of hardened steel comes off this hammer and hits him in the chest, a small piece, like really small. And he's like, oh, that hurt. And his buddy goes, what? And looks over at him. He's like, dude, what happened? He's like, what do you mean? He's like, have you been shot? And he looks down, and his chest is covered in blood, and it's running down his leg now because this thing has gone so deeply into his chest that the ER thinks it's a gunshot wound. And they think he's lying about a gunshot wound to get out of some sort of trouble. They're like, you can tell us if this is gang-related or something. Like you can say it was an accident. We just need to know what kind of firearm it was. And he's like, I was swinging a hammer at work. And they're like, sure you were. So finally, I don't even think they got the chip out. I don't think they could get it out. So they just patch him back up. And so now he's got this chip of steel in a not so healthy spot inside his chest now. He's like, well, my troubles have to be behind me. I need something. I need a recreational vehicle. I'd love to just have some fun in my spare time while I'm on workman's compensation. I'd like to get a four-wheeler, an ATV. So he goes to this guy's house to buy a used ATV on the cheap. And he's in the guy's backyard. The sun's going down. It's getting pretty dark. And he's got one hand, his bad hand, operating the throttle. Rum, rum, rum. And his left hand, he's sort of got like swaying by his side, hanging loosely. Unbeknownst to him, someone has taken the cover off of the chain of the ATV. And it's a manual. So the chain is spinning back there until you hit the clutch and put her in gear. So it's just spinning. His hand goes into the chain and gets drug into the sprocket. It cuts off one finger It cuts the tip off another, and it mangles the third. So now his left hand is crippled, his right hand is crippled, and his chest is all bandaged up. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to sell some weed. I'm just going to sell some weed. Can't nobody hurt me if I'm in my basement watering my weed plants. Well,
Did he grow it?
he grew it. Yeah,
How's he even pulling the trigger on the spritzer bottle?
I'll get the electric spritzer. And
The electric spritzer.
yin, 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 yin. Nothing bad can happen to me as long as I'm here. I'll drive my big rig. I'll provide for my wife and child. So I've been going to him for a few months now, and I feel awful for him. So I always buy a little extra. Like I pay him well. Like he's like, yeah, it's $2.90 for an ounce. And I'm like, here's $300. You know, I'm the good guy. Here's your extra, here's your $10 tip or whatever. But I'll try to I had these long, awful conversations with him about how awful his life is. And he's always giving me discounts on stuff and asking my advice on various aspects of his life. Well, one time he wasn't there, but his wife was. And I went to the door and I'm like, hey, Bill told me to come by. He said I could get some, and I'm not sure how in the know she is about his whole weed industry. So I thought I could get a little pot from him, and she's like, how much you want? And I'm like, ounce and a half. Yeah, call it 375. Let's do 400. She's like, whatever. She comes back, big ass bag of weed. So I already knew that she was kind of a shitty person. She just seemed a little rude, or maybe she was annoyed, didn't want to be a pot salesman. I can understand that for sure too. But I'm a nice guy. I'm not showing up all weird. I find out she's been cheating on him the whole time while he's gone in his fucking big rig. The reason she was annoyed with me is because she had a dude showing up pretty soon, and she needed all the witnesses out of there because his weed sales were cramping her style. Because she's only got so much time, because she's got to send her kid to her parents' house. She's got to arrange this boyfriend to come over while her husband is away and hide the boyfriend from his weed clientele. Friends, in quotation marks. And
they used to have a better marriage, but her big thing was getting fingered. And
it was the most depressing shit ever. He lost the house. He lost her. She took
lost his fingers.
He lost the truck, everything.
He lost the truck?
He lost it all. He was making payments on it, like most of those guys are. They don't own those trucks outright.
Losing the truck is a big deal. Like it's their job, it's their house, it's their
dude. He took the cab off of it and lived in it by the end.
I was
the ultimate cucking.
I was on the road with a comic who was like super into pot, and he flew in for the gig, and so he had to like find some, and it's pretty easy at a show. You just talk about it on stage, and then people come up to you afterward. And so that's what he did. And then, we had adjoining rooms at the hotel, and he gets back. It's like 2 a.m. and he come back, and I'm like, where the fuck were you? He's like, I just one of these folks' house and got some pot. I was like, it was 3 hours ago. He's like, yeah. It turned out they wanted to talk, and it was just like this 60-year-old couple who just wanted to talk to him about comedy, and like he couldn't get out of there. And I was like, this is the most scared straight program I've ever heard.
Yeah.
The idea that you might end up in some it's not even about going, you had to go to a dangerous neighborhood to get your drugs. Like, no, you had to go to some suburban people and just listen to them for 3 fucking hours. Like, that's
even if free pot, I imagine, sucks, right? Like, here's a scenario I'm inventing in my head. Ooh, Steve talks about pot on stage. Steve likes pot. Steve, you want to hang out with me and my 3 buddies? We're going to smoke up. You probably think, ooh, that sounds fun. Then me and my 3 buddies, who have no personality to offer to this situation, say, Steve, private performance, please. Be funny. You're on stage again. Earn your tokes.